Networth Park is the UK's largest music venue, and for over 50 years, it has hosted some of the biggest names in rock and roll, including the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Oasis, Queen, and the list goes on and on. So The Rock has helped to roll in funds to pay for some vital restorations in order to preserve this part of England's heritage. When I married into the British aristocracy, it was the start of a wonderfully exciting journey. But it was also a little daunting. I became a Viscountess, and for an American girl from a small town outside Chicago, that was quite a shock.
I live with my husband Luke, heir to the Earl of Sandwich, and our family at Mapperton House in Dorset.
Living in a place like this is a joy, but also a challenge. And every day we're aware that we're preserving a very special part of Britain's heritage. Mapperton has opened up an extraordinary new world for me, and I can't wait to share it with you all.
So if you love castles and manors and stately homes as much as I do, please join this American Viscountess as I journey into the British countryside in search of some of Britain's finest historic houses. Networth House was transformed in the 19th century, from its red brick Tudor origins to the Victorian Gothic masterpiece we see today. The drama and flamboyance of Networth's architecture has become synonymous with the record-breaking live music events held here since the 1970s. At Networth, each generation makes its mark, and Martha leads me to a room where Networth's rock history meets royal history.
So here we are in the Queen Elizabeth room. Now what's interesting about this room is, it's called the Queen Elizabeth room. Edward Bulwer-Lytton wanted to recreate the room as it would have been when Queen Elizabeth I came to visit.
I see.
Now he painted on the fireplace there 1588 because he assumed that she came during the Spanish Armada. But through our research and looking beyond in the National Archives, we know that she came earlier than that. We think it was 1566, 1568, come for dinner, but then came to stay for 4 days in 1571. So Edward Bulwer-Lytton wanted to recreate that feel.
So that's what he did.
Indeed.
And also the ceiling.
The ceiling is magnificent.
Yeah.
And the ceiling is relatively new. I say relatively new, but this was added, and it has Robert Lytton's insignia up there as well.
Right.
So this would have been added post Edward Bulwer-Lytton.
Okay, so
the oldest part of the room is actually this stool. This is a Tudor stool.
Okay.
And that would have been very common.
Right.
And that is of the period. But this room, we use it all the time. It's a principal guest room. We've had all sorts of interesting people to stay. Mick Jagger slept in that bed.
I mean,
in 1976 when they were playing, and
that's right.
The park just around.
This is the rock and roll historic house, obviously.
Absolutely. But being a family home, when my mother-in-law was stripping the bed after he'd left, she actually found a little, and they are little, pair of knickers. So of course, what does she do? She puts them in an envelope, sticks them in the safe. My husband has framed them. They're on the wall in there.
No.
Well, what else are we going to do with them?
That's brilliant.
You've got a 4-poster bed. So why not have a 4-poster bath? Wonderful to have this working with the room, but of course when we had Oasis in '96 and they were staying in a caravan, we had a call from the promoter asking if Liam could come up and have a bath. So of course he can have a bath.
Absolutely.
So we shut the door from the house guests, let them in to use the bath. My father-in-law comes up to bring him a bottle of champagne, as you do, the rock star in the tub, who has to perform again that night. And later in the documentary, Liam is saying that a liveried footman brought him a bottle of champagne. Of course, it was my father-in-law, Lord Cobbold.
That's brilliant.
But a great welcome. But come through and have a look at our most famous pants in the house.
I cannot believe this.
Because what else are we going to do but keep them
and frame them? Oh my gosh. Do you know, I saw the Rolling Stones in concert, so this means even more to me.
A bright red pair of vintage 70s pants.
I mean, they're fantastic.
From the Stones in 76.
But they're itty bitty.
Well, you know,
I mean,
he's a petite performer.
He is a petite performer. How brilliant and lovely that it really is works well with the wallpaper.
It matches. A gothic red.
How fun.
This video is sponsored by Babbel.
Nuotare fa bene a tutti.
Nuotare fa bene a tutti.
I'm just getting ready to go into my first scene at an extraordinary historic house here in England. And one of the things that I love to do before I start filming, and actually when I have little breaks, is to practice my Italian with Babbel, one of the top language learning apps in the entire world. And Babbel has been instrumental in my language learning. It's been absolutely incredible. And when I bought a little Italian house about 4 years ago, I spoke niente Italiano, nothing. I could not communicate with anyone. And now, since using Babbel, I'm at a B2 intermediate level, all thanks to Babbel. And Babbel is incredible because it prepares you for those real life conversations.
E poi anche piccoli piatti, sì.
So if you've got big plans this summer and you want to speak the language, Babbel not only prepares you to speak that language, and it's scientifically proven, by the way, to help you learn a new language in just 3 weeks, but also it helps to build your self-confidence. For me, when I'm in Italy, I feel so confident and good about myself that I can actually go to the cafes, the restaurants, speak with the builders, and by the way, go to those flea markets and ask questions about an item that I'm interested in or negotiate a price, all in Italiano. So do check out Babbel. They've got podcasts, they have incredible games. The lessons are absolutely outstanding. As you can see, I just did one here. And quando io sono a Castello in Inghilterra, io sempre provo di fare una lezione in italiano con Babbel. So when I am at a castle in England, I always try to do a lesson, an Italian lesson with Babbel. They also have a 20-day money-back guarantee, so it's a no-brainer. And like I said, it's probably one of the best things I have ever done. I love it so much. Look I'm smiling. I mean, it's just brilliant. So do check out Babbel. There's a link in the description down below, and you can get 60% off of your Babbel subscription today by using my link or scan the QR code. Promise you, you will not regret it. Not only do you get to learn a new language, but you also get to boost your self-confidence. I think that's pretty amazing. All right, I'm off, everybody. I gotta get on set because I gotta film at this amazing stately home. Be sure to click the link in the description to get 60% off of your Babbel subscription today. Rock concerts, events, and filming opportunities all help generate funds to restore and repair the house. I sat down with Martha to hear more about how she juggles managing a house the scale of Networth and being president of historic houses.
So this is the picture gallery. It's also referred to as the Long Gallery, and this is our drawing rooms. We've had The Crown filmed here, and Queen Mary, not the real one, was sat in here listening to the King's speech.
Wow, yeah. How fun.
But it's still a family home.
Yes.
It's still our family drawing room. Would you like some tea?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. Now, I have, of course, so many burning questions for you because it's wonderful, can I just say, coming to visit a historic house, not just because it's Networth, but because it's Networth and one of the custodians is an American. But I have heard every now and again, Martha, a y'all.
Absolutely.
So remind me what state you are from.
I was born in Suffolk, Virginia, and I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So you know, a lot of the South, a lot of Southern influence there. And Tuscaloosa is where the University of Alabama is based, and so actually quite a cosmopolitan Southern town. And my mom was fantastic at exposing me to art and antiques, and My parents very supportive of us traveling and
Right.
furthering our education.
How did you meet Henry and here you are?
I know it's quite a tale. We met when we were children. My mother published a publication called Antiques Monthly and Horizon magazine for the performing arts, and she created a tour experience called the Delisle Grey Journeys with Bill Delisle, Viscount Delisle from Penshurst Place.
Right.
And at the time, they had the idea that she could pull together groups of Americans who were very interested in history, many looking back at their ancestry, but fascinated and wanting to support heritage here in England.
Yes.
So she would take a group to have dinner with Lord Delisle and his family at Penshurst, or they came here to Nebworth with my parents-in-law and many, many other houses.
Right.
But they got on incredibly well, made fast friends, realized they had sons of a similar age. My husband was actually born in Brooklyn, New York. His father was working in a bank in New York at the time. And so she thought it would be fun. My mother-in-law thought it would be fun for him to see a little bit of America. So
Right, because he was born there.
off
Yeah.
he was sent to Alabama, of all places.
Of all places.
Of all
It's
places.
Brilliant.
So my father taught him how to water ski, of course, on Lake Tuscaloosa. We took him up to Washington, D.C., and gave him a little dose of America so he could see it. And that's been a lifelong love. We've been married 37 years.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Incredible. So 37 years, but when did you take over the running and of Nebworth and becoming, when did that change, that shift happen for you that you and Henry
We always
were here?
knew that it was a responsibility. We always knew that we needed to come back and assist either Henry's parents or hand the baton over, accept
Right.
it from them and carry on that tradition. Henry's father was quite keen for us to come back a little bit sooner than we did, but I was pregnant with Edward at the time in Los Angeles, which is where we moved initially. We married and moved to Los
see.
Angeles because Henry was working as a screenwriter in California.
So did you get married here at
No,
Nebworth?
we got married in Alabama.
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
Martha, I mean...
Christ Episcopal Church, Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
It's so brilliant.
I know, it is fantastic,
So you
our
knew,
family church.
In one sense, you knew that you would end up here. So you moved here, and what year was that when you moved
We
to
moved back
Nebworth?
here in 93,
Okay.
and we swapped houses in 2000.
Okay.
And I started working with the estate in 93.
Right.
Initially in our catering and our sales and marketing and helping in a different way.
Just learning
And
the ropes, really.
Exactly.
By the time Martha and her family moved into the house, Nebworth was on the map as the home of classic rock concerts. This success had developed from the pressing need in the 1950s and beyond for historic houses to diversify and open their doors to the public to survive.
It was a very tricky time. Often it was that the taxation death duties, we had a series of 3 death duties in a row here.
Oh,
and that's
my
very
goodness.
crippling.
Yeah.
And much of Nebworth Estate was taken over for the development of the new town of Stevenage. And I'm delighted to be part of Stevenage.
Right.
But that was 10,000 acres taken on compulsory purchase at agriculture rate.
Right.
So you have all these things that are happening which are making it less and less viable.
Right.
So
Of course.
it was imperative, I think, that many owners started to share best practice and experiences in trying to find a way forward.
Yes.
And that was created through a committee, initially through the British Tourist Authority, but ultimately became the Historic Houses Association.
Yes.
And my father-in-law was one of the founding members of the Historic House Association. So it's quite, you can see where they shared information
Yeah.
on opening as a safari park or opening for filming or opening for day visitors.
Or a
And
motor museum, Bewley.
exactly. Bewley and the Motor Museum are amazing, what they've done there, and the safari park at Longleat,
Yep.
and you look at Goodwood. But these were all integral members to that infancy
Yes.
of the Historic House Association. And they very much were inspired by that, but they also learnt from each other.
Yes.
They learnt from each other about best practice, but also the pitfalls.
Because this was new.
Yeah. And everybody was
houses-
hands-on. We're
Yeah.
still hands-on.
Yeah. Yes,
But my
yes,
mother-in-law
we are.
was literally dressed as a wench serving in this very room a banquet to paying customers.
Right.
And made all the costumes as well and cooked all of the food. And that's the sort of hands-on level that they did and that you had to do.
You had to. And so were your in-laws thinking, we're part of this small group to begin with that's creating this organization, which we'll get onto in a second, called Historic Houses, at that time, Historic Houses Association, but we need to do something different. And is that where the idea of the concerts came to be?
The concerts are it's a great story, that, because we're celebrating 50 years of hosting music here at Networth this year.
So that's 1974.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they received a letter from an event organizer, shall I call him, and they honestly thought it was a Renaissance fair. It was actually the Bucolic Frolic. We actually had some great American acts on it. You know, the Allman Brothers, the Doobie Brothers.
My gosh,
I know, the Doobie Brothers.
them.
That was my first album I ever bought. And you know, it's incredible that that's what it evolved to. But they were open-minded and they were free-spirited people, and they were willing to give it a go, and they had fun with it.
Yes.
They enjoyed hosting the acts. You know, we needed to turn it into a little bit more of a commercial business.
Yes.
When Henry and I took it over. But it wouldn't be here without them. They came up with ways to facilitate, to make it happen. And we're making, you know, we're just taking it that step further.
That leads me to Historic Houses, this wonderful association where your father-in-law was really one of the founding fathers. And you now, Martha, are the president. You're the first woman president and the first American president.
Indeed.
And this is let's think about it. This is a British organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that in itself is a little bit daunting, but my goodness, what an honor and a privilege.
I want to talk to you just a little bit about also Historic Houses, the association, that it's very different from, and me as the American, I had to learn this quite quickly, very different from National Trust or English Heritage.
Indeed. So there are a lot of differences, and when one looks back at the National Trust and English Heritage, they are phenomenal in what they do, and in many cases they are the ones that sort of drew the line in the sand of which we all lead up to learn from. We still use the National Trust book on housekeeping and how to do restoration and various things on chattels today. But the National Trust and English Heritage are government owned and government controlled, and they have many different aspects and opportunities than we do. As an example, they don't pay business rates.
Right.
They don't have inheritance taxation. We're there to support independent heritage properties. That is houses, gardens, and parks. We're there to support the properties, support the members, to ensure they have the information that they need to run their homes and their businesses, because it can be a little bit isolating when you take on a property like this. You know, you're coming in from a different industry, most likely.
Yes.
And while it may have been your family home, most of us have to go out and earn a living elsewhere before it's your turn to take it on. And so it can be a bit of a weird situation. And we offer that non-judgmental environment. So whether in today's world you log on to the forum site and you can ask a question about where do you find a Victorian bathtub plug, or how do you clear a hopper head that's integral to two different roof structures and lines. But someone will have done it before.
Yes, exactly.
And we're all happy and willing to share that information. We're all so supportive, as my father-in-law found, in trying out these ideas and learning from one another. So we can be very supportive, very nurturing as co-owners, but as an association we can streamline the government guidelines to support any planning initiatives, to help them along their way, to ensure that there is a great forum of networking, both with other members but within government, and to make sure that their voices are heard. And with our visitor members, it's engaging with them. It's making sure that they understand and feel a part of what we're doing to protect the nation's heritage. It can happen many different ways. We have a wonderful magazine that comes out quarterly, both for our house members and our visitor members.
Yes. Right, because you can, of course, become a visitor member.
You can.
And you've got access to over
300 houses, gardens, and
houses
parks.
and gardens. But if I'm sitting here watching this and I'm thinking, well, I can't possibly get to the UK for various reasons, but I do want to support historic houses and become, let's say, an international member,
Absolutely.
it's still vitally important.
It is.
And there's lots of benefits.
And the magazine's also available digitally. So everything can be accessed from afar or once here as well. And one can visit when they're here, but also engage from afar and have this little door open.
Yes. There's online lectures, there's online workshops. You can hear from different homeowners, the restoration projects that they're doing or what they're undertaking.
And you can engage with them directly as well. It acts as a portal.
Yes.
So it just opens up many, many doors, 1,500 in fact. Work, an amazing resource and such a support.
Yeah.
And also an honor and a privilege to help work and fight for the causes that we're all representing.
That's right.
It's a wonderful circle of support.
Yeah.
Support, engagement, enthusiasm, and love of heritage.
And
a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and a couple Americans too.
A few Americans scattered in there for good measure.
Spending time with Martha, and like every historic home across the UK, it's clear Networth is a house in need of constant repair and attention. And Martha's enthusiasm and delight in preserving this building for the future is inspiring.
The tapestries are so magnificent, and this is a 17th century Flemish tapestry. It's a wonderful heirloom to have, and my grandmother-in-law took it with her to retire at a lake house which was built for her when my parents-in-law moved in, and of course enjoyed it immensely there, and then it came back when she moved again. We have it, secured in a way that it is safe for it to be enjoyed.
Yes.
But what you find is the weight of it. You can see as it pulls down, we've got some little stress marks. And so it does need constant assessment. You have to watch for moth damage.
Yeah.
You've got to watch for light discoloration. And the responsibility is just, it is never ending, but it's too beautiful not to have enjoyed for everyone to be able to look at it.
The main project for me at Matberton is we have some fantastic 18th century tapestries as well from Belgium. They are in dire need of restoration. The end of one has been bitten by one of the dogs from the past.
A lot of the colorings that were used came from natural products. Sometimes they're even insect blood. All sorts of different natural products were used. And of course, in a modern world, even then I expect, but the moths are attracted to it. And once you start getting light damage, it's trying to find out how far do you go to stabilize it?
Yes.
How far are you going to restore it? Because actually you're not wanting to recreate it.
No.
You're wanting to maintain it and hold it.
Exactly.
Because this is the reality. Things are, they are changing, they're decomposing, they're beginning to deteriorate. So you have to look and notice. And I keep looking at the crack above it as well. And you just notice these things when you can.
Yeah.
And then try to figure out what's going on behind it and fix it as best you can or hold it.
And exactly. And also with these historic houses, and many of them, they are quite vast. And even though 3/4 have been pulled down, it's still big. And you can't see every single crack or leak
and often you lift that lid of that project and you realize it's not just a crack. There's death watch beetle, there's dry rot, there's watering grass. There could be any number of things going on. So it is important. We have to be proactive. We have to just jump in there.
And it's not just the interiors at Networth which have undergone major restoration projects. Outside, in the blustery spring sunshine, we explore the Victorian fantasy world which adorns the building.
I have to say, I don't think I've seen so many gargoyles on a building in my life.
Gargoyles, griffins, dogs, all sorts of beasts, because they would, a lot of them were fantastical beasts.
Right.
This is why, when Harry Potter came here to do a product launch with us, that we fit the bill, and we were just so honored to be the British launch of Harry Potter.
Of course.
How cool is that?
So cool.
But this end of the house was the first part that we did the restoration on in the 1980s. Unfortunately, this is also where we had damage recently, and this is the northwest corner, which we had to put 6 underpins, literally money in the ground.
Yep. that nobody can see.
Nope, because we had a Victorian turret literally twisting away from the Tudor structure. And my colleague went up into a cherry picker and he could put his entire hand through the crack of the building to the inside of the building.
Oh my gosh.
The drain pipe was coming off and it ricocheted all the way this way and around the corner through the library into our circular stairs. Come around. This is one of the more recent restorations, and we had to do this in 2020. So we managed to get a little job done after Liam Gallagher performed, but this was a monumental task, this corner.
Of course.
And frustrating because it was already restored.
Okay.
It was already restored, and the clay underneath with climate change has expanded and contracted. And the Victorian foundation had a differential from the Tudor.
Right.
So windows had to come out.
Oh my gosh, did they?
Absolutely.
So you had scaffolding all the way up,
all the way
presumably.
up,
Yep.
and all the way around. And we've got the sort of new shape of Networth, as the architect had to explain to me when I said, can't that be a little bit straighter? And he's like, no, the building has moved. We can carry on with the render replacement and with that decorative design, but this is the new shape of Networth.
Oh my
So
goodness.
this all had to be rebuilt.
And you can see that it has.
In the windows, that they're not actually that symmetrical anymore, which is it's a shame. But I don't think they ever really were.
I'm just noticing, again, because there's so many gargoyles, griffins, but I'm noticing, are those bats? Like
those are bats on barrels.
Eating their tails?
Indeed, yes. It's quite a trick, isn't it?
Okay.
So that is a pun on the family name Lytton. With the bats on the barrels. Do you remember the flittermouse with the bat, and the ton is a barrel? And so these were Victorian. This was very ornate Gothic architecture that was on all the pier caps, but slightly concerned the Victorians with their purist views that it was maybe a little bit racy, and they let them decay on these ends. So we only have it there.
Okay.
And we've worked over here on the Central West, but we just have to do what we can do. And in replacing these carved beasts up here with their lanyards, their halberds.
Yes, exactly. And
they're facing west because that's keeping away the evil west. It's warning any evil that might be coming from the west to keep away. It's a guarded building.
And when was this done again?
The top bit, 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, I wanted to do these beautiful columns, carved columns. We were all the way around them, and there literally was not a penny to spare. We come in with the great love and passion to save, restore, maintain these buildings and keep them accessible.
I could just stay out here all day.
It's very deep, isn't it?
Especially now that the sun's out.
Yeah.
And just, you could just stare at one spot and you would be taken in.
Since the 1950s, an inconspicuous tower in the courtyard stood empty. In 2020, a major restoration program began to restore the building.
We believe that the design would have had the flooring in each level, but with a straight ladder, like a loft ladder going up that you would climb up, rather than this circular stair. But of course, this works better for a modern visitor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Including little passing points that one could bump into. But we've left all of the original features as best as we could. So we have the fireplaces on each level.
Why were there fireplaces here?
Because, of course, the watchmen, there's no heating in here. And the watchmen needed a place to sit, to stay warm. They were in here for long periods of time to make their tea and coffee.
Yes.
And make it just habitable, really.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, it's today I can see why you would need
absolutely.
a fireplace.
And all of this oak came from our estate. We found a tree in the woodland. We picked one out, cut it down, and cut the timber to shape. That is reclaimed iron balustrades, which we made from the old estate fencing. A lot of estates in England you'll recognize probably have some at Mapperton.
Yes, yes.
But it surrounds the fields and many areas of the woodland. Most is decomposed and collapsed. So we salvaged what we could and reused it.
So you've really upcycled
absolutely
so much here. It's amazing.
This entire house and estate has been built on upcycling, recycling, reusing. Bricks and slates and things were always reused.
Right,
so
yes.
It's not a new thing.
Yeah,
It's the correct thing to do.
Exactly.
You know. and putting in windows in the wall slits. I don't think there would have been a window like this, and it does work. You can open it if you want to, and even shoot an arrow out of it. But do look and make sure you don't get a gardener first. But this is the design, and that's how they would peek through, and that's why you need a fire.
Is fantastic.
Yeah.
So you've kept the original arrow slits.
Absolutely.
How clever.
Yeah.
That is so clever. So this was finished when?
We finished this in March 2020, which of course was right when the pandemic hit. And so opening up access to a new area, and then we were shut down by the pandemic and all of the legislation that followed through.
Yes.
So it was a very frustrating time for us. We couldn't have visitors in here for another 2 years.
Right.
So it was a real shame.
Yeah.
But it's here.
But it's here.
And it's open.
We all survived.
And you now can experience it. And you can now come and play Watchman.
It's brilliant. Okay, so how many more steps do we have to go?
Well, there's 55 in total, so I'd say you've got another 21 to do.
Okay.
So here we are at the top of the Watchman's Tower.
Yes, I feel like I should say a quote right now. It was a dark and stormy night.
Indeed. Edward Bulwer-Lytton had good calls for coming up with that famous line.
He certainly did. Oh my
But this
goodness.
is spectacular, isn't it? Because this gives you the vantage point of the whole park.
Wonderful.
And one of the things we wanted to achieve was to give visitors this vantage point, this view, but to understand the heritage of the house going back to the Saxon times.
Yes.
So we created an app, the Watchman's app, which is a free app, anyone can download it. And it gives you the opportunity to look at the house, to look at the park and the church, and to learn about it. So you can look at the Norman times, the Saxon times, you can look at the Victorian times, the modern times now, and you can see how the house has changed. We believe there was always been a structure here because it's written about in the Doomsday Book.
Okay.
And it would have been called Cynebaward. So similar,
yes, exactly.
Similar to this. We think it was probably the camp of King Cyneba.
Okay.
But
right.
It would have been a wooden structure of some type, and obviously none of that would have survived.
Right.
But this would have been part of a village settlement. So on this app, which we created because we couldn't open,
it's incredible.
You can experience it and move around in virtual time and look at it in different time periods.
Right.
So very cool.
Oh, that is very cool. There's a ladder up on the roof, so
Indeed.
you're having works done
We're
up
always, we started when my father-in-law moved into the house. He created a 10-phase program of restoration.
Wow.
And the first phase happened in the late 80s, 1990s. That was the northern end of the house.
Okay.
And we've been slowly moving our way around. This bit here, the 3 chimneys and the 2 turrets, were our most recent restoration, and that was completed after the 2022 concert with Liam Gallagher. But that's what it's about. You make the money, you sink it straight back in.
Yeah, but that's it. You bring the visitors in, you've got to put it
and
to
you
a
do
project.
as much as you can.
Yeah. The watchtower here, though, it was used to literally be a watchtower.
Yeah.
Is that right?
The last time we have a record of it being used was 1950, when my grandmother-in-law remembers as a child a little chit of paper, as she would call it, being placed at her father's breakfast setting. That was the watchman's report, and he would report on mainly wildlife. We didn't have the marauding, Danes coming down at that point, but it did happen at some point.
But it did. The marauders did
for
come.
Victor, it would have been deer, owls, munkjack, that sort of thing.
Yes.
But you can see we've still got a lot to do. The last estimation was about £14 million to complete the southern roofs, all the southern roofs, and the structural repairs that we have.
Yeah. And
So
that's what these
we've come a
historic
long
houses
way.
are. It's just never ending. But,
Never ending.
You
do what you can.
You do what you can as the generation that is currently the custodian of the house. You do what you can in the hopes that when you pass it on to the next, that it's in better shape than when you
and
took it on.
my ambition, I really hope in my tenure that I can get it off the Heritage at Risk list. We're still on the Historic England Heritage at Risk. Yeah, we are.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we are.
And
So
why is that?
Because we have £14 million of structural repairs still to do. It's a benefit in one element, in the fact that it is raising attention to the situation.
Yeah.
But at the other hand, it's quite
it's
an
still at risk.
obligation And you know, I would love, that would be my ambition. I would very
in
much
your
like to
tenure.
get it off before
Oh, gosh,
one of my
right, I
children
didn't
takes
know
it on.
that.
Yeah, indeed.
Wow.
So it's a constant battle,
Yeah.
and it's one that we've been working on for decades, well, for centuries.
I actually think that you'll be able to do it with your American spirit, your
can-do
and
attitude,
the can-do, and
the don't give up.
and the don't give up, and the American work ethic. I mean,
Yeah.
we do need to kind of
Yeah.
pat ourselves on the back for that.
Yeah. Well,
we do.
it is a 24/7 job, but it is an honor and a privilege.
It is,
and it is really, really quite a cool
my gosh.
experience.
It is, and it's. Thank you for taking me up here because I just been able just to see it in all its glory from here, but also to be able to understand, just looking at the restoration work that is constantly going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The beautiful 28 acres of formal gardens at Networth largely date from the Victorian and Edwardian eras, but some features date back centuries.
Okay, Marty, what am I hugging right now? It's enormous.
So this is our oldest oak tree on the estate. This one dates back 360 years, the oldest recorded tree that we have.
Right.
However, I have been speaking to some tree specialists, and I think we've got some older trees within the estate as well, up to 450 years possibly.
Right.
But on record, this is the oldest oak tree that we have.
record. Wow, she is wonderful.
It's a beautiful example.
Absolutely beautiful, and looks very healthy. She has just a lovely spot here as well, doesn't she?
Yeah, it really is. It's a perfect spot for it. It's absolutely beautiful.
How wonderful. So you're quite new being head gardener, is that right?
Yes, I've been here just over a month now, so yeah, early days.
Wow.
But, I'm picking up things really quickly. I'm really interested in the history of this place anyway.
Yes.
So yeah, it's quite easy for me to get inspired about the different stories and the different characters over the years. So now we've just walked through the green garden and into the gold garden. So,
and with the golden sun. Thank you, Marty. I'm so happy. So this is wonderful. So tell me a little bit about this area of the garden.
Okay, so this is the gold garden, and we've got predominantly hot colours within this area. We've got this beautiful water feature, which is just giving that lovely sound of water as you wander through this area. So Robert, the first Earl of Lytton, he almost bankrupted the estate with the amount of work that he completed. He spent so much money on plants and installing so many different features throughout the garden. He almost bankrupted the estate. So after him, his son Victor, he came in and he basically looked at it and thought, we need to simplify what we're doing here to be able to keep our costs down. So he enlisted the help of Edwin Lutyens.
Right.
And Edwin Lutyens came in, and he actually was his brother-in-law at the time.
Okay.
So that was quite helpful, seeing as he was such a celebrated architect.
Right.
But also an incredible landscape designer. He looked around and he thought, I'm going to create a series of rooms as we work our way down the garden.
Okay.
So this is the gold garden. We have like hot colours within this space. The green garden, we work our way through to the brick garden, which has got these beautiful pastel colours.
It's so wonderful, and just even, that view is really spectacular because you're able to see the domes and the battlements and some of the griffins and gargoyles and just, a powerful house.
The impact that Sir Edward Bulmer Lytton had on this house was incredible. I mean, the Gothic styling that you see now is really what sets this house apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
And standing apart from the house in the surrounding parkland is St. Mary's Church, where generations of the Lytton family forever rest.
Now watch your step into this ancient old church.
Yes,
This
reminds me.
is St.
the
Mary's.
age.
And of course, this is much older than Networth House. This goes back to 1190. The bell tower was a later Victorian addition, but the body, the nave of the church here is, it's ancient, it's phenomenal. But we have regular active services here, and we have memorials here,
goodness.
lists of those who gave their lives for the Great War. With the War Memorial, which we celebrate and honor every year, the church opened up and did an ingenious thing to remember all the different fallen individuals, but even up to a modern day, and now have this active archives, which we've been able to help them with, and getting more information from the community too, to come and understand the loss and the sacrifice, and to remember,
and to
which is
remember
what it's all about. So there are lots of memorials, because this has been the family church for a long, long time. It's a Church of England church, but the family have worshipped here for many, many centuries. And so remember Pamela, Victor's wife, and of course remembering Victor himself here. We do have the mausoleum in the park as well, which Elizabeth Bulwer-Lytton built originally for her mother and for herself after that famous tithe argument. But there are other more modern inhabitants as well. Robert and Edith are there. Constance Lytton is there, the famous suffragette.
Yes.
So this brings us down into the Lytton Chapel, and this is where many of the 17th century family members are entombed and remembered.
Right.
And you can see as well with the different names when the house passed through the female line, and you can see Robinson Lytton and Strode, other names that have been brought in over time, but always with Lytton intact.
But lovely to see this special, special place.
What a special place Networth is. And it's been an absolute joy to spend time with Martha and explore the history of this spectacular building. I hope you've enjoyed this historic house visit as much as I have. And if you'd like to support these high quality productions, do consider becoming an American Viscountess patron at patreon.com/American Viscountess. Until next time, bye everybody.